The villagers of Karava still spoke about the day the sky cracked open, though no one could agree on what exactly spilled out of it: light, sound, or something entirely different, something that did not belong to the catalogue of natural things. For ages, Karava had existed comfortably hidden between the arms of two amber-colored cliffs, a forgotten settlement where even time walked slowly, where every dawn arrived like a reluctant traveler pausing at the village gate. Life there was simple, stitched together by familiar routines: the smell of millet roasting over clay ovens, the rhythmic clang of blacksmiths shaping tools, and the dry wind dancing across empty courtyards. But on that day, exactly 12 minutes after the sun reached its peak, the air thickened with a trembling hum, a vibration so subtle at first that people mistook it for the distant murmur of thunder. Then, with a suddenness that scattered birds in terror and left cattle stunned in place, the hum surged into a bone-deep resonance that shook every stone in Karava. Children clutched their ears, elders dropped their walking sticks, even the earth seemed to flinch. The sound was neither loud nor soft, it was simply everywhere, an echo that came from the world and from within the body at the same time, as though the universe had drawn a breath and forgotten how to exhale. It lasted only 7 seconds, but in those 7 seconds something ancient awakened beneath the dust of Karava. When the sound faded, a quietness descended so absolute that people hesitated to speak, afraid their own voices might shatter whatever unseen thing now hovered over the village. But the silence did not remain empty for long. From the far end of the eastern cliff, where the rock wall stood smooth as polished marble, a narrow fissure began to glow, a soft pulsating light that throbbed like a heartbeat. No one had ever noticed the fissure before, not even the shepherds who often leaned against that very cliff to escape the afternoon heat. The villagers gathered cautiously around the cliff, forming a trembling arc of onlookers who could not decide whether to fall to their knees or flee. Among them stood Ariv, a quiet 19-year-old boy with eyes far too observant for his own peace. His mother often said that Ariv saw things that others overlooked, not supernatural things, but details, patterns, hidden currents in the mundane. It was Ariv who first stepped closer while everyone else held their breath. He realized quickly that the fissure wasn't merely glowing, it was exhaling light, releasing it like gentle waves pushing through a narrow shore. Each pulse of light carried warmth, not the warmth of fire but something softer, like the warmth that memories leave behind after one recalls a childhood moment. Ariv could feel the pulses sync with his heartbeat. And then, without warning, the fissure expanded. The villagers gasped as the small slit tore open into a vertical seam, tall enough for a person to walk through. From within the seam came a wind, not hot, not cold, but impossibly clean, as if it had traveled through a place untouched by time. The wind carried a whisper that no one could understand but everyone could feel. It said something like come, or perhaps awake, or something far older than words. The elders insisted the villagers step back, fearing it was an omen or a curse. But Ariv felt no fear. What he felt instead was recognition, as though he had been waiting for this moment without ever knowing it. Against every warning, he moved forward. The wind strengthened as he approached the opening, tugging at his shirt, his hair, his breath. When he finally stood before the seam, he peered inside, and saw nothing. Not darkness, not light, not space. Nothing, and yet everything. It was like staring through a window made of silence. A sudden tremor shook the ground. The seam quivered, and before Ariv could understand what was happening, the glowing fissure inhaled. A single violent pull of air swept every grain of dust toward the opening, dragging loose cloth, dry leaves, and frightened shouts with it. Ariv tried to step back, but it was too late. The seam pulled him in, swallowing him whole in an instant. The villagers screamed his name as he disappeared into the slit. And then, just as suddenly as it opened, the seam collapsed, sealing itself into the cliff, leaving no trace that it had ever existed. Mothers fainted, men ran to the cliff pounding their fists against the stone, and whispers of doom spread through the crowd like wildfire. But Ariv did not die. Far from it, he found himself standing on a ground that wasn't a ground, in a space that wasn't a space. Everything shimmered without color, moved without motion. He could hear the sound again, the hum that split the sky, but now it was soft, weaving itself through every breath he took. He sensed presences around him, not physical beings but currents of awareness that recognized him. When he finally gained the courage to speak, his voice rippled like water. "Where am I?" he whispered, and that was when the hum answered him, shaping itself into a voice that seemed to come from the very fabric of existence. "You are where everything begins." The voice was neither male nor female. It was ancient, patient, vast. Ariv tried to ask more questions, but the space around him shifted like a living veil. Suddenly, images flickered before him, a burning sky, a trembling ocean, villages collapsing, people screaming, visions of doom unfolding across a world he recognized. But then new images layered themselves over the destruction, a figure standing on a mountain of light, calming storms with a single word, touching the earth and healing its wounds, guiding people through darkened lands. And through all these images, one shape remained constant, the figure was him. Ariv's chest tightened. "No," he whispered, "I can't." But the voice interrupted, gentle yet unyielding. "You were called the moment the sky trembled. The world needs a pulse bearer. And you are the first to answer." Ariv wanted to refuse, to deny everything, to run. But before he could react, the space around him folded inward like a collapsing dream. The hum surged again, stronger, deeper, until the entire dimension dissolved into a blinding flash. When Ariv opened his eyes, he was lying at the base of the cliff in Karava. But something was different. The villagers did not recognize him, not because they had never seen him before, but because the boy who returned was not the same boy who vanished. His skin glowed faintly as if lit from within. His eyes carried a depth that did not belong to human youth. His heartbeat echoed with the hum of the unseen realm. And when he stood up, the earth beneath him pulsed, responding. A storm brewed beyond the horizon. Everything was about to change. The news of Ariv's return rippled through Karava with a force that matched the mysterious hum that had first swallowed him into the cliff. People gathered in small clusters, whispering his name with a mix of awe and fear, unsure whether he was a miracle or a living omen of destruction. Even the elders, whose faces were etched with centuries of calm wisdom, were shaken. They exchanged uncertain glances as Ariv walked through the village with steps that felt too steady for a boy who had vanished for hours, hours that felt like lifetimes. Ariv noticed the way children hid behind their mothers, the way men tightened their grip on wooden tools as if expecting him to unleash something catastrophic. But he also noticed something else. The wind followed him, bending its direction subtly around his body. Shadows moved in response to his presence. The earth beneath his feet seemed to soften, reshaping itself to embrace rather than resist him. None of this felt natural, and yet, to Ariv, it felt inevitable, like remembering a secret he had always carried but never dared to acknowledge. He tried to return to his daily routines, to regain a sense of normalcy, but even the simplest tasks betrayed his difference. When he touched a bowl, it vibrated. When he sat on the old stone bench, it warmed beneath him. When he approached the river, the water swelled upward as though rushing to greet him. Terrified, Ariv retreated from the village and headed toward the forest that bordered Karava, hoping the solitude of nature would calm the uneasy resonance within him. But the forest reacted too. Grass straightened when he stepped near, ancient trees leaned toward him, birds circled silently above as though recognizing a forgotten ancestor. He collapsed to his knees near a quiet creek, burying his glowing hands in the cool soil, desperate to silence the pulse that throbbed in his bones. But the pulse only grew stronger, rising like a tide within him. It was then that the voice returned, not outside, but inside his mind, soft as a distant flute yet impossible to ignore. The pulse does not belong to you alone. It belongs to the world. And the world is waking up. Ariv clenched his fists, his breathing ragged. "I never asked for this," he muttered, trembling as the earth around him responded with faint quakes. "I just want to be normal. Normal is for those who are not chosen," the voice replied, neither cruel nor comforting. "But you were chosen the moment you stepped into the seam." Before Ariv could protest, the air around him warped, and the creek water stilled into a perfect mirror. In its surface he saw not his reflection, but an image of the world beyond Karava, a world trembling at the seams. Storms gathered on distant shores, mountains cracked with angry lines of fire, and villages far from his own suffered under chaotic forces that seemed to rise from the very core of the earth. The hum had awakened more than just him. It had awakened something immense and volatile in the world itself, something that sought balance, something that demanded a pulse bearer. He felt a shift in the wind and looked up to see a figure standing on the opposite bank. A tall woman wrapped in dark silver cloth, her eyes glowing faintly like stars seen through thin clouds. She carried no weapon but radiated an aura of power that Ariv instinctively recognized. She spoke without moving her lips. "You returned sooner than expected." Ariv stood, cautious. "Who are you?" "I am Kayla," she said as she stepped across the water without sinking, the creek parting to let her walk through. "The last guardian of the pulse path. And you, Ariv of Karava, are the first pulse bearer in 1,000 years." Ariv shook his head. I don't understand any of this. You will, Kayla replied. Whether you want or not. She lifted her hand, and with a sweep of her fingers, the forest shimmered. Reality peeled open like a curtain, revealing a vision of an ancient world filled with pulse-bearers, warriors, healers, guardians of equilibrium who once kept the world stable by channeling the energy that bound every living thing. But something happened long ago, something catastrophic that shattered the order and sealed the pulse within hidden seams across the earth. Now those seams were breaking open again. The pulse is returning, Kayla said, her voice echoing with gravity. And with it, old forces rise, forces that seek chaos. You were chosen not by chance but by resonance. The pulse inside you recognized the pulse in the world. Ariv felt, his heartbeat sinking with her words. A resonance indeed. What do I have to do? Kayla stepped closer, her eyes piercing. You must learn to control your pulse before it consumes you. Then you must travel beyond Kariva to the other seams. You must face what emerges from them. And above all, you must be ready to confront the one who destroyed the pulse bearers centuries ago. Who? Kayla's expression darkened. The Unmaker. The name alone sent a tremor through the forest. Leaves shivered, water recoiled, even the air thickened with dread. Kayla explained that the Unmaker was once a guardian like Ariv, gifted, powerful, revered, but he succumbed to the darker temptations of the pulse, reshaping it for destruction rather than balance. He tore apart mountains, drowned cities, and nearly extinguished humanity before being sealed away. But now, with the seams weakening, he was stirring again. Ariv swallowed hard, trying to steady himself. And I'm supposed to fight him. Not alone, Kayla said gently. But you are the key to awakening others who carry fragments of the pulse. The world once had many pulse bearers, now it has none. You must find the new ones, teach them, unite them. Only then can the Unmaker be stopped. Ariv's breath hitched. It was too much, too enormous, too impossible. But deep inside him, the pulse thrummed with certainty, with purpose. The hum that had frightened him now felt like a calling. Kayla extended her hand. Come, your training begins now. Ariv hesitated for only a moment before taking her hand. As soon as their palms met, a surge of energy shot through him. His vision blurred. The forest around them dissolved into swirling streams of light. And in the center of the luminous void, Ariv saw the outline of a vast path stretching infinitely forward, pulsing with the same rhythm inside his chest. The path of the pulse bearer. He knew that once he stepped onto that path, his life would never again belong solely to him. It would belong to the world, to its heartbeat, to its future. And so, with a deep breath, Ariv stepped forward. The pulse roared, the world trembled, his journey had begun.